Hello and welcome to my first ever MCB review video. In these videos, I'll be taking a look at some games that I really enjoy that aren't from the PlayStation 2, as that is the focus of my channel. My new MCB reviews will allow me to talk about other games from time to time in a far more condensed way than when I do my PS2 reviews, so don't expect these too often. Anywho, as you can tell, the first video in this series will be talking about the PlayStation collection of Ark the Lad. What's Ark the Lad? Well, I'm glad you asked, as it's a series of games that were developed for the PlayStation as a way to show off the system's capabilities. The small RPG series did very well in Japan, so naturally the developers were eager to get the games localized for other countries. During the localization process of one of the games, the team leader decided that it might be better to put all the games into one big collection pack, and thus we have the Ark the Lad collection, which comes with 4 games, a disc that talks about the series' development history, a really great booklet that gives you info on the 4 games along with nicely detailed artwork, and some of these little standing things with the characters' names on them, which are kinda cool. In all honesty, it's a really great collection that I'm happy to have. Now, I had never played these games before and only knew the Ark the Lad series because of a PlayStation 2 game that we'll be talking about later. After playing that game, I got interested in the series, and that's when I came across this collection. I picked it up and spent last year playing through all 3 games in my free time. So why don't we go ahead and take a look at these games? Side note here, my copy of the first game seems to have gotten damaged, so I can't record footage of it, so hopefully pictures of the game will do, but I do have footage for the other 2. Starting things off, we have the original Ark the Lad. Why don't we get the gameplay out of the way first, since it's pretty simple. Ark the Lad is a tactical RPG that, for the most part, is quite linear in its progression. Usually you will be told of a new area you need to go to and can simply head there for the next battle, with very few areas really getting complex at all. The interesting thing about the gameplay is that instead of going through a bunch of menus to choose your character's actions, you can instead move them around within certain spaces and can open menus only when you need to use an item or spell. It's a small but nice touch that helps make the game stand out a little bit more from other tactical RPGs. And yes, this is something that remains throughout all 3 games. Though there are some issues. For one, you can never really tell when your character will level up, so gaining levels is just something that happens. At the very least, your characters will gain experience from doing anything, like attacking an enemy or being attacked themselves, which is quite helpful. Also, because this game is very linear, there aren't too many side quests, and equipment is very limited and doesn't really give much of an idea of what benefits they give. So then what's the plot of the game? Well, it starts off with this girl whose name I'm afraid to even try and pronounce, as I will probably butcher it horribly, is sent to take out a sacred fire. Meanwhile, our hero, Ark, sets out to look for his father, who has been missing for almost 10 years now. Out walking around, Ark comes across Kukuru. I tried. When a demon emerges from the fire that she puts out. After killing the demon and being told of a great evil re-emerging by some guardian, they decide to travel together. From there, their journey begins as they travel the world to meet the other guardians and make new allies along the way. It's a pretty simple story for the most part that really shines in the cast of colorful characters you will meet. We have the treasure-loving Kakongra, the crazy old Gawen, and my personal favorite Ronin in the series, Tosh. What's cool is that each of these characters play out a bit differently as well, like how Kakongra uses monsters he summons to fight for him, Kukuru having light-based spells, and Inga using his martial arts. Hell, even the timid Paco, who uses musical instruments, is really useful. Trust me, he can dish out some great damage with his apathy horn, and really support the team with his healing harp. Once you reach a certain point in the game, you'll have to do some grinding, as the story sections throw you into battle after battle. And thankfully, you can get some great grinding done at the temple. Just complete that and you'll do fine. The game's pretty short anyway, only lasting about 10 hours, and ends off on a bit of a cliffhanger with the party members being separated, which of course takes us to... So after some complaints that the first game was just too short, the developers decided to give it their all in the sequel. Actually, as a little bit of trivia here, the first 2 Ark the Lad games were meant to be one game, but had to be split up into 2 due to some time constraints. And holy crap, what a jump Ark 2 is. And by that, I mean Ark 2 is a huge game, as well as being a much darker one. I mean, shit, things start off with our new hero Elk, a young boy watching his village and family being shot to death. Like, what the hell? The game really has an atmosphere of things being out of balance, and the evils that had occurred in the previous game having an impact on the world years later. Oh yeah, that's right, we now follow Elk, a young man who works as a hunter. One day he gets a mission to stop some crazy ninja, and ends up getting tangled up with some runaway girl named Liza, who is being chased after by a mafia group. Together they hide away in a nearby city with his friend Shu. But it isn't long when Elk sees a flying airship that's the very same airship that was used to burn down his village. From there, Elk and Liza set out after that airship, where along the way they meet new characters and start to learn things aren't always what they seem. For the most part, the story is still simple, or at least the main plot is. But this time around, there is a much greater focus on characters. Like I said, you'll meet plenty of new characters and old ones, but the new characters are pretty great, as when you first meet them, you will get to learn a bit about their history and struggles before journeying in your group. Like Elk's backstory involving child experimentation and a special friend of his, Garaga and the complications of him trying to help his daughter, and Sayana trying to restore her kingdom. I apologize if I mispronounced her name. Heck, some characters from the previous game get some extra development, like Tosh dealing with the death of his father. It's quite an adventure, and for the most part, I really like the colorful cast of characters you meet along the way. Some of these characters even stand out a bit more in battle, like how Liza can recruit monsters, Shantae having useful ice spells, and Sayana using her cards and her spells. Battles still play out the same as before. The huge change in gameplay comes more from the towns and dungeons. Now you can travel across a more detailed map that really looks great and lived in. The same thing goes for the towns, which you can now walk around in, and even visit shops to stock up on items or get your characters better equipment. Weapons and armor can now gain levels to make them better, and there's quite a variety of weapons that have some unique ranges to them. Like clubs can hit 3 characters at once, knives are thrown, and even guns have great spread shots. There's even a new hunter system where you can take on small jobs to make some extra money, though this is only important for the first few hours of the game, as these soon become side quests that I just ignored as I enjoyed the main story more. There will also be large dungeons with multiple pathways, puzzles to solve, and lots of battles. These can go on for quite some time, which is both frustrating and daunting. To make up for this, anytime you die, you will be brought back at the beginning of the battle with your party fully healed, at the cost of losing half your money. I will admit that I had died a few times throughout the game, most of this happening when I had first reached the ice temples, due to a huge spike in enemy levels. Here's a helpful piece of advice for you. Eventually, you'll get a character named Diebeck, who can be powered up by finding extra parts from across the world. Diebeck can earn experience, but doesn't level up. Instead, you can give the experience he earns to the other party members, which works really well for leveling them up. Trust me, you're gonna want to do that. Now there is this monster tournament arena game as well, where you can use the monsters you've captured in Arc 2 to battle friends or fight in arenas. However, I hadn't played it since my current file is in the last dungeon, which doesn't allow me to play the tournament game. Finally, we have Arc the Lad 3, which is an interesting game since originally the developers didn't plan on making another game. The setup is quite simple, as we follow a new hero, Alec, and his friend Lutz, who both dream of becoming hunters, which hold a lot more importance now after the events of the second game. After helping save their village, the two set out to become hunters and travel the world aiding those who need them. That's it, really, as now the story gives more of a focus on our characters and the little adventures they have from one place to the next. Don't get me wrong, there is a greater plot, but this really doesn't come into play till much later in the game. It's just that there's more of a focus on being a hunter this time, and the gameplay really reflects this as well. In order to progress through the game, you have to complete missions from the hunting guild. All you really have to do is just take on a few missions until a story mission appears, and then move on from there. However, I tried to complete every mission I could, only skipping 2 that I found to be really annoying. You can fail missions too, which can have different outcomes and even prevent you from being able to get later missions, which is why I tried to get almost every mission I could. These missions will range in what you will have to do as well. Yes, most consist of doing battles, but sometimes these battles might have time limits to them, be a tournament, or have special stipulations to them, while other missions will have you delivering items, testing your knowledge, attending a party, or even participating in a singing contest. To complement this is a fun and interesting world filled with entertaining and lovable characters. Of course, there are the characters who will be joining your party, like the hot-headed weapon expert Cheryl, the master swordsman Velhart, and my personal favorite new character, the wise mage Marcia. Just like in previous games, each of the characters play differently in battle. Marcia is the best spellcaster and borderline broken when equipped with a special ring, Lutz can steal and attack enemies with unique knife skills, and Theo can turn weak enemies into cards that can then be used as summons. Each of these characters have some fun and good story moments when you first meet them, and end up becoming a great cast of heroes. You'll even meet some past characters who are always a treat to see, like Liza and her monster farm, Garaga and his daughter, and my man Tosh, who has some of the best moments of the game and is still an awesome badass. Side characters you meet in villages and missions are also great and memorable. I mean, there's a group of incompetent thieves who reenact past events, a desperate ninja named Spicy who fails at love in some funny ways, a rival group of hunters, and of course a woman who runs an orphanage that becomes a bit of a special bond with Alec. What's great about these missions and the small stories is that some of them have really nice arcs and endings, making the moments you ran into them throughout your journey even more memorable. Even a rich, bratty bitch has a bittersweet ending depending on how you play a certain mission. Locations really stand out more too, as towns feel very distinct from one another and lived in as well. Dungeons this time around are for the most part not as long as the second game, making them much more bearable and even fun. Not only are there missions, but there are also secret quests you can do and bounties you can hunt that are completely optional. While armor and weapons don't level up anymore, you can now synthesize your own equipment and items at these new locations. Visually, the game has received quite an overhaul compared to the last two games, with a far more detailed sprites that have really great animations, as well as a slight 3D visual to the stores and homes in towns. In the end, I enjoyed playing all three of these games, though of all of them, I would have to say Arc the Lad 3 was my absolute favorite. I would recommend these games to anyone who enjoys RPGs, as I think they're a great experience, with the third game now being one of my personal favorites for the PlayStation 1 and in RPGs in general. These games have such fun and simple gameplay, entertaining and memorable characters, and create a fantastic fantasy world. A part of the reason I wanted to talk about these games is because I don't think they get enough attention, with the third game being such an overlooked gem. And I really like taking a look at lesser known games as I find them interesting. I can't give these games enough praise, especially the Arc the Lad 3, so if this video got you interested in these games as well, then I encourage you to give them a try. I also wanted to play these games because of the last game in the series, which has the characters from all the other games in it as well. So before I played that game, I wanted to play the originals first, which turned out to be a really great journey. However, I'm not done taking a look at the Arc the Lad series. Join me next time, we'll be taking a look at the first game in the series I ever played.